Okay, good morning, everybody. If you are watching this means that you are getting ready to present your book presentation, which should be over the personal novel that you chose at the beginning of the 6 weeks. Now, in order to help you with this presentation, because we have changed some of the requirements on this one as opposed to the one that you did before, I'm going to walk you through how you should do this presentation. Now, your presentation skills are going to be about 50% of the grade, so it's important that you pay attention to everything that happens in this video, especially with how the PowerPoint, the presentation itself, is structured. So without further ado, let me begin. Hello, my name is Mr. Johnson, as you can see here at the bottom of the screen, and I am presenting my favorite book, which is a book of my choice, The Hunger Games, which is by Suzanne Collins. If you know me, you know I really love this series. It's something that I very much enjoy. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and present what I have. Okay, so to start with, your first slide should be a little bit about summary and plot. This is the only time that you will be able to write a paragraph on the slide, and that is because summary and plot is very hard to bullet point. So once again, this is the only time you're going to be allowed to write in paragraph format. All of your other information will be bulleted for the most part. So to start off, The Hunger Games takes place in Panem. This is a post-apocalyptic America where children aged 12 to 18 compete in this event called the Hunger Games, in which they fight to the death until one remains. Now this one in particular is about a young woman named Katniss Everdeen, a young girl from District 12, who volunteers for her sister Prim when she's chosen at the young age of 12 to participate in the Hunger Games. The story follows Katniss's adventures throughout the capital, which is the rich and wealthy portion of Panem, which controls all the other districts, like hers, where she comes from, and her adventures in the arena where she is forced to fight the other 23 tributes until one remains. Okay, so do you see how I gave a very small but very detailed summary of some of the events that happened in the Hunger Games? This is what your summary and plot need to be like. You need to give us enough information to where we understand the plot of the story without going into too much detail. You want to keep this explanation around 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so next slide. On this slide, we're going to ask you who is the most important character in the book. If you read something that was more a practical book, like the history of baseball or construction or something like that, then we want you to mention a person who has made an impact in the field and why you believe they've made an impact in the field. And this is information that you can find in your book. But, for example, if you're like me and you chose a work of fiction, I chose my favorite character from the book, or rather, who I believe was most important. This would be Rue. Now, if you know me, you know I advocate for the people of District 11 when I read this book. And I'm a big fan of Katniss and Thresh, and I even think Peeta has his place in the book as one of the top characters. However, I believe that Rue is the most important character because she is instrumental to the entire plot of the Hunger Games trilogy. Without her assistance, Katniss cannot survive the arena. She was the one responsible for letting Katniss know about the Tracker Jackers, which ultimately impaired the actions of the careers. She also let Katniss know that there were supplies that she could blow up in order to further impair the career, so they had less chances of winning. And finally, because of her and her death, she becomes the true spark of the rebellion. Now, in the book, we obviously know that Katniss is the one that really begins to stir the flames of rebellion in the capital. However, because of Rue's young age, her situation being a poor young girl from District 11, and the fact that she dies in such a brutal manner, this is what really wakes up most of the citizens of the capital and is a real wake-up call to some citizens of the capital who believe that watching young children fight to the death is wrong, especially children as young as her. So, as you can tell from my explanation, you get enough information from each of these subtopics that lets you know what's going on in the book. This is how you need to structure it. You need bullet points because your main focus in this presentation is going to be explanation. You need to be able to explain some of these themes and why you feel like certain things are important. This is going in line with what we started talking about This whole 6 weeks, finding theme, being able to explain, analyze, things like that. So, next slide. Sorry, my bad. Next, we ask you, what's the most important scene? So what is the most important thing that happens in this book? Again, if you're reading something that's more of a practical book, then you need to explain what's the most important event in that field or in that subject that you're reading about. Okay? It's just as simple. For me, the most important scene in The Hunger Games is Rue's death. And I say this because, for all the following reasons why I believe Rue is my favorite character, but with a little bit more information. So, in this case, Rue's death inspires Katniss to win. Now, before, Katniss was only trying to survive the Hunger Games for the sake of repaying Peeta, who saved her life prior in the book. However, now that she has gotten an egging on from Rue to win the games for her because she knows now that she cannot because she's about to die, that truly inspires Katniss to go forward with the games and win, not only for the sake of her sister or for the sake of herself, but for Rue as well, who was not able to win the games due to her death. And again, her death inspires the rebellion. Without her, Katniss would have had smaller and smaller chances to actually win the games. So Rue's presence throughout the entire book is absolutely very much important. Also, on a more personalized level, because of Rue's young age, her small stature, and where she's from in Panem, it makes it more easily to relate to her. She signifies that the tributes at the end of the day are just children. Even though the careers are tough and menacing, even though they actively go out and kill other tributes, we also have to realize that they are also just children between the ages of 16 and 18, no older than the children watching this presentation right now. So we have to also humanize them as well, and that's what she lets us do. And because of her death, she becomes a martyr for the people of District 11, which gives hope to her people and inspires rebellion in the districts. The author's theme and purpose. This is important. Now, you don't have to pick multiple. I just did because I find multiple themes going on throughout the book. And if you notice, I tried to pick images that showcase each one of these themes. I tried to pick images that showcase whatever it was I was talking about. Make sure your images relate to whatever it is you're going to mention, whenever applicable. Okay? So for example, the poor and disadvantaged are taken advantage of by the rich and wealthy. The rich and wealthy districts of Panem are able to afford academies to train their children to become careers, which means they go into the games with skills, whereas children from the poor districts are not able to train for skills. They have to train in the capital, which puts them at a lesser chance of winning the games entirely. Government systems continually exploit poor people. In the book, it talks about a system called Tessera, where children can trade their names in order to get a year's supply of oil and grain. So basically, if a child is of age, they can put their names in a bowl more times to be chosen for the games in exchange for food. That is clear exploitation of poor people because it feeds off their desire to eat by putting their names in the bowl more times for a life and death match, which is clear exploitation. And finally, there are no completely good or bad people. Now, all the people in the capital are not completely evil. Remember, they have grown up and been conditioned to view the Hunger Games as a sense of pageantry, not necessarily a showcasing of complete bloodlust and violence. So the people in the capital aren't completely bad people. On the flip side, Katniss has to kill to survive, which most of us would consider killing as a bad thing. Therefore, we can assume that there are no really good or bad people. Okay? Now I'm going to really wrap this up. Important setting. This is just something for me, but we really want to know what the important setting is. Again, if you're doing a practical book, give us a practical or most important site for whatever topic that you have. These are my reasons why I believe this is the most important setting. It showcases a lot of the brutality that the capital has for tributes, like setting traps, releasing mutations, things of that nature. And this is where most of our story takes place. So it's really important for character development and plot development as well. Finally, would I recommend this book? Absolutely. You see the big poster in my room if you're my student. If not, come by visit. I have a big poster of this in my room. It's one of my all-time favorite series. I constantly mention it a lot. And it's a really good book. I really recommend it if you like dystopian literature or if you really like young adult literature. It's really fun. It's a really nice read, and it's always interesting, and the movies are great. So, without further ado, that's my presentation. These are all the things that you need to look for when doing your own presentation, and this will be available to you on Canvas, okay? So this is Mr. Johnson signing off. Thank you for listening to my presentation.